landscapes in Albuquerque. It was not a straight line. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to begin with my Peace Corps experience, which was when I first started trying to communicate through drawing. And I want to talk about how that experience taught me to see what I was looking at as opposed to what was in my mind's eye. And this is Mami Pura and her sister Mama. They're sisters, and well, I said that. And they were my best girlfriends when we were in Africa. And together with other village women, they taught me about drawing to communicate with other people. So when my husband, Cress, graduated from Dartmouth in 1967, we volunteered for the Peace Corps. How many of you remember 1967? Okay, then I don't have to ask how many of you were even born by 1967. Looks like we have a quorum. Okay, so we were accepted into a community development program in Sierra Leone, West Africa. So Sierra Leone's this little country out here on the bulge of West Africa, right about where the equator cuts through. Here's an enlargement of the country. This country is only a few hundred miles in each direction, and there are 11 major tribes and 11 major tribal languages in that area. And this shows where we ultimately were stationed in Joru and Gaura chiefdom near the Liberia border. So that's where we ended up. Now, the Ministry of Agriculture in Sierra Leone wanted to, no help, okay, thanks.
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
Oh, okay, are you not able to hear me?
And the lady
Turn
with
on
the dog, did you
switch
please
on the
quiet your
microphone.
dog or remove it?
There's a switch on the microphone.
Oh, there's a switch, oh, you mean it's not on?
Not on.
Okay.
Okay.
No, it's, Annette, stick around. She drove all the way for Carazozo, so let's put up with a little yipping.
You don't mind the yipping?
I don't mind the
If you
yipping.
don't mind the yipping, we'll listen.
Annette, please stay.
Outside and just stay outside. So we're bothering you.
How does this turn on?
I think you turned it on.
It's on? Okay. Okay, the Ministry of Agriculture in Sierra Leone wanted to increase the production of rice and of cash crops. Rice was a staple of the country, but Sierra Leone was a net importer, and they should have been an exporter. So Cress was to work in agricultural extension out of Kenema, the capital of the Eastern Province, and work with farmers to increase production of cacao, coffee, and rice. And the Ministry of Health had determined that the infant mortality rate was close to 60%. And they determined that, sorry, I've got a lot of adrenaline to manage right now. It'll calm down pretty soon, but I get to do a certain amount of stammering. So they felt that that high mortality rate was due primarily to cultural malnutrition, which meant there was plenty of food in the country, but babies and small children are not getting the right type of food to keep them healthy. So they wanted to change what mothers in the villages were feeding their children.
The mic is
Lynn, you've lost your microphone.
the mic.
Yeah.
Hello, Mike? Mike. Stay with me, Mike.
It's not on.
Not on.
Should be on.
No, it's not.
Okay. So if you'll try to get the mic turned on, I'll come to the front of the stage and
There
hello.
it is. There it is.
Okay.
You can hold it if you want.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's a thought. Okay. So I was to work in child health and nutrition, and I was to do follow-up from a traveling maternity and well baby clinic that would come to the village every week or two and follow up with the women and work with them on improving the children's particularly nutrition. So that was the idea. Okay. We were trained half in the U.S. Virgin Islands and half in West Africa, and we were trained on the technical aspects of the job, and we were also given introduction to the culture, and we had some rudimentary training in Mende language. Now, Mende is a complex tonal language. No Mende grammar had been written yet, so there was no textbook. And we were taught a couple hours a day by local primary school principals who would come in to teach us some Mende. And in there, as in many parts of the world, knowledge is power. And you show off your knowledge. And so we were given at least 50 vocabulary words every day. And they never gave us a rule of grammar without giving us 3 or 4 exceptions as well. So, also Mende had some sounds that we don't use in Western European languages, like GB, B, and KP, KP. And I'm going to give you, I'm going to speak just with my voice. Am I okay here for now? My 2 hands are 2 people meeting each other. So the exchange of greetings would be Bula, Bizier. That's hello, thank you. Bobigan, how are your bones? Kayingawama, I can't blame God. Obiabig, Obigan, how about you? How are your bones? Kayingawama. And then because I was a woman, the next sentence would always be, Obihini, where is your husband? Talopam, he has gone to the farm. So you can see what some of the challenges were. Also because it was a tonal language, the same words meant different things depending on the tone you said them in. And so the phrase Nyahini loamaha and Lahimi Nyahini loamaha. One way of saying it would mean my husband is coming today. The other might mean my husband is going to die. So you can see the problem. So this language difficulty turned out to be a major issue in my work. So here we are. We arrived in Joru village, Gaura chiefdom, and we moved into the house that was given for our use and met our new neighbors. So here I am, age 21, with one of the neighbor women. We're standing outside the back door of our home, which was one of the finer homes in the village, in that the mud house was stuccoed over with cement. Our knowledge of Mende was minimal. Now, according to the Sierra Leone Ministry of Health, the key to improving child health and nutrition were to add protein to the baby's diet, babies and small children's diet, and to give children boiled water rather than just dipping it out of the stream. So, Then I was supposed to do this as an extension work out of a traveling clinic. What I learned quickly was no clinic had ever traveled to Jeru, nor was one likely to. So there went my source of legitimacy, and I was wondering now, how am I going to explain these concepts in a language I can't even order a meal in or ask for directions? And then I realized I've always drawn cartoons. I can do visual aids. I can draw what I'm trying to tell people. And so, I mean, after all, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So I started drawing Boil the Water. And other pictures indicating types of protein that could be added to small children's and babies' diets. And it just carried on and hoped for the best.
How did you know how to do that, Sarah?
How did I know how to do which?
The drawings.
Oh, well, I'd always done cartoon-like drawings.
Okay.
So even back with my, I won't get ahead of myself, but ever since I was a kid, I did little cartoon drawings and caricatures and things like that. So I was like one of those kids when you say, "Can you draw Superman?" and says, "Yeah, watch me." So that was not an issue. Okay.
Did you save all your drawings?
No, it was in West Africa, miles from anywhere. It was on big pieces of big pieces of poster board that I'd draw the pictures, and we didn't have iPhones. We didn't have cameras in our phones. We didn't have phones, period. There were no computers. Our only communication was by mail, and we maybe got one out of every three. I think we just lost that. I think we only got one out of every 3 pieces of mail that was sent to us. And I don't know that anybody got much that we sent to them. So there it was. So this was a moment of truth. Shortly after, one of the first things that people say to you when you're meeting new people is, "Bo biba milo," which means, "Where are you from?" And so we were trying to explain this. Fortunately, we had a 10-year-old kid who lived next door, a bright little schoolboy, who had a pretty good grasp of English, and so he would translate for us sometimes. And so I was showing some photos. This is of our front yard where I grew up. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so our front yard, and I said, "This is my father's compound." And, but at this time of the year, it's very cold there, so there is snow. "This is my father's compound with snow on it." People were going, And then I'd run off to our little tiny kerosene fridge and the even smaller little freezer in it and scrape out some more frost, say, "This is snow," drop it in somebody's hand, they say, "Hot." Brand new sensation there. And one of the women picked up one of the photographs that was of an abstract painting Crescent had done. It had geometric lines in it, it had swirling colors, and she said through the little translator, "And is this your father's compound?" It was a Wile E. Coyote moment. I'm assuming everybody's familiar with the Roadrunner cartoons, with the cartoon anvil that drops on the unsuspecting coyote's head. I realized, well, first of all, I thought, what are they seeing? So, you tell me, what are you seeing?
Lines and just lines.
You see some lines. The main thing that you're seeing is a little piece of paper, a piece of shiny paper with patches of color on it. That is exactly what they were seeing. For them, it wasn't a window into a world. That is something we learn as children, looking at storybooks, picture books. And even if they had the good fortune to go to elementary school, the school might not have books. Or if it had books, it might have one or two to share amid a bunch of students. And only if they were very lucky were there any pictures in it. So how would they know? So I asked myself, what are they seeing when they look at my drawings? Water isn't blue syrup running across the ground. It's transparent and it's in a channel. Fire isn't red tongues under a pot. It's invisible during the daytime. And what's this about these floating buckets and those disembodied hands? I had been relying on conventions that we've all learned. So it was back to the drawing board. I started doing some drawings and asking people what they saw. So I started with simple geometric shapes, asked the women what they saw. That's just my friends, neighbors. And they'd say, Kiko, I don't know. So I now did solid geometric shapes with shading and said, what do you see? And they said, Kiko. So back up. I'm in trouble here. How do I back up? Okay, we're going to have to get out of here, and I will just go in where I was. Yeah. Okay, so there we are, and there we are.
Uh-oh, going.
It'll get there.
Okay.
So I drew the solid shapes again with brands on them. And people said, oh, milky mia, soccer mia, cartoon mia. They needed context. They had no clue what I was looking for, what I was trying to communicate with them until I provided a familiar clue. What I did learn was that people always recognize, this is something true of human beings, we always recognize a representation of a human being in action. And we have this from world history. These are rock art from North Africa, South Africa, Australia, here in the Southwest. People always recognize people, no matter how simple. But I wanted to get it a little more complex so that I could start getting the concepts across. So I drew a common village scene. This is a woman pounding rice. And that's for getting the hulls off the rice so that you can cook it. And the house in the background. And I asked the women, what is this? And they said, oh, it's a woman pounding rice. And that is her house. Now, in Sierra Leone at that time, women wore tops for formal occasions, like going to the market or somebody pulling out a camera. But for just cooking and working around the compound, typically they didn't wear one. It's hot there. Okay, so I decided to add some perspective. I drew an identical woman, a little smaller, and another house a little smaller further up the street, and asked, what do you see? And they said, well, that's a woman pounding rice. And I said, and who is that? That is her child. And what is that? That's the latrine. Thought, it was another wily coyote. So I'm asking myself, what is going on? These are smart people. This can't be a simplistic answer. They can see that those are adult women with elongated breasts from nursing multiple children. There's all the details of a house. What were they seeing that I didn't see? It took a while, but finally I realized they were reading it like an Egyptian tomb painting. The gods are the biggest, and then the kings, and then the priests, and then the worker bees like us, like mice running around in the margins of the painting. They saw hierarchy. And I've since learned in research into visual learning that that's indeed a universal human thing. We tend to assume the biggest thing is the most important thing. And if you look at ads, you'll see that that's what's the largest, this thing they're trying to advertise.
Lynn, the microphone is on and off.
What's going on?
Are you still able to hear me?
Comes and goes.
Yeah.
Okay, even if let's stop fooling with the mic and let me just try to talk. I'll have to come back and glance at this every once in a while. Okay, so they saw a hierarchy there. So the largest figure was the most important figure. So this was the senior woman. And that was the senior house. But they're identical. They're reading this as symbolic. And symbolism trumps details. So this was the junior woman, her daughter. They didn't mean it was a child. And this was the junior house in proximity with the main house. So it must be the latrine. So I came up with new guidelines for myself for communicating visually. I used familiar objects in silhouette, pretty much simple shapes. I use a human figure in action. Don't bother with shading or perspective because whatever's largest will be seen as most important. So I started drawing some typical village scenes and asking people what they saw, and they identified all of them. Notice that everyone here is carrying their loads on their heads. When you live in a small village and there's obstacles all over the place, I mean, there's firewood you're stepping over, there's pots, small children, and so on. There's poisonous snakes, there's all kinds of stuff around. You don't want your hands full of stuff. So people wanted to be hands-free. And if they were carrying anything, even an umbrella or a dish of food or a machete, they carried it on their heads. Sometimes people would make a pad out of a head tie or a coil of grass to help with a heavy load like the firewood, help pad the load and stabilize it. So, now my job was a lot easier. I didn't have to draw water. If I'd showed a woman with the bucket on her head, everyone knew there was water in that bucket. And it's about child health, so keep the baby in the picture. That's how people carry babies. And if the woman is tipping the bucket into a pot on 3 stones, everybody knows she's cooking the water. The pot wouldn't have been on the 3 stones if there hadn't been a fire. She'd have been setting a fire and then moving the pot onto the 3 stones. And it wasn't about the water and the fire anyway. It was about the woman's actions and what she fed the children. So I created some simple stories around 2 women. And I did drawings illustrating the stories, like a storyboard or comic book, only in poster-sized pieces of paper. This is Nyandengo. She gives her children cooked water, as you can see from the enamel mug sitting down there by the cooking pot. And in another drawing, it shows she also saved out some protein foods like bits of smoked fish or broad beans or peanuts for her littlest kids before she puts out the big family dish of food for the men and the older children to eat from. Just keeping back a few of those scraps of protein and getting them into the smaller children made a big difference in the children's health. This is Nyamungo, and she doesn't bother with all that stuff. She lets her small children fight with all the other children for the whatever's left in the family dish after the men have finished eating. And she gives them branch water right out of the bucket to drink. So you can see the baby has diarrhea. And her little boy is showing the classic symptoms of kwashiorkor, which is protein deficiency disease. So he has the poochy cheeks, sharp little shoulders, distended belly, swollen joints, and skinny upper limbs, but the lower limbs have edema. They retain liquid and so on. So that condition is called a kwashiorkor, at least by the medical people. It's considered normal in the village. And a child who has these symptoms is much more susceptible than others to measles and other respiratory diseases, which quickly passes into pneumonia. And then with a child with a weakened system, you quickly lose them.
Could it be reversed?
Huh?
Could it be reversed if he's got protein in him?
If he got protein in him, yes, definitely. You could feed that child fish for his main meal every day of the week for a couple of weeks. That would all start going away, and pretty soon you'd have a healthy child. But it isn't instantaneous, so the cause and effect isn't obvious. The women enjoyed laughing at Nyamungo. They said she was lazy, and they said she was faking a headache. Women wear their head tie like a visor down over their eyes to indicate they've got a headache and they are in no mood to be hassled. So this led me to the fifth principle for visual communication, which was tell a story. Let your pictures tell a story. Now, I don't know if the mothers in the village were ultimately convinced, other than Mommy and Mama, who actually did start doing this. I don't know if they were ultimately convinced by advice from a childless stranger who looked to them like a young teenager. I looked probably about 14 or 15 to them, because I hadn't had children and I hadn't worked hard and I just didn't look used up. So if an African teenager showed up in your place and told you to change how you fed your children, how much attention would you pay? They were very kind and polite, but I'm not sure they changed anything. So I ultimately did other things. I wound up teaching, writing and teaching an adult literacy program. I taught secondary school English in a Muslim missionary school for boys between 12 and 21. It was run by a group of Ahmadiyya missionaries from Pakistan.
Was that all still in Sierra Leone?
Yes, it was still in Sierra. It was in our very own village. There was a mission school there, but it was a Muslim mission school. Much of the upcountry was mission. There were Christian upcountry schools, but that wasn't necessarily all of them. Okay, so all of that, however, is another story. At the end of 4 years, we came home. So we're back in the USA. We came back to the USA. It was time to find a job. It was 1971. Yes, sir.
Did you save any of your hieroglyphs to pass on to other Peace Corps volunteers?
Yes, I gave all those pictures, story pictures that I'd made, to the local health department in Kenema, so that the Ministry of Health could use them and maybe reproduce them for use in other villages.
Were they useful to the volunteers?
Who knows?
Did you see a lot of improvement during the time you were there?
Of child health and nutrition, not particularly, but adult literacy, yes, I have some stories to tell there. And I have some interesting stories to tell about teaching classrooms of 50 boys aged 12 to 21 English composition. We had some wonderful essays. One of the lessons was to do descriptions, and I still remember one verbatim. It was, this is my friend Amadou Fofana. He is 6 inches high, he is 6 feet high, inches wide. He liked to bluff in the streets, and he always plays at gambles. Which shows he got the concept. It's a little shaky on the details, but it was a good start. Okay, so here we are in the U.S. It's 1971, which you all remember, and there was a recession moving across the country from east to west. It hadn't reached California yet, and L.A. had jobs. So we went to Los Angeles. Now there weren't a lot of jobs looking for people with experience in third country child health and nutrition or in teaching secondary school English to Muslim schoolboys. So I took a stopgap job doing tellering and opening new accounts for a savings and loan. Were you about to ask something, Paul? Oh, okay. I thought you were. Okay, so it was early use of computers at that point, and computers filled a room at that point, and you needed another room full of air-conditioned equipment to make it work. And so businesses were just starting to use them, and they were just coming into banking. Savings and loans started using them before banks did. And our savings and loan was taking advantage of that expanded control and opening new branches. So they wanted to open a bunch of branches across the LA basin, and our vice president in charge of savings wanted, we had now 13 branches, he wanted to establish a teller school so that we could have more consistency in operations and customer service. So being an innovative manager, he actually looked at the resumes of people he already had. And he saw that I had written and taught an adult literacy program. Adult literacy in Africa, teller training in LA. Same difference. So he asked if I could do a teller school, if I could put together a teller school. And I gave the right Peace Corps response, which is, no problem, I can do that. Okay, so as I put together the training for the tellers, I knew I could put a bank form on the overhead projector and show how to fill it out. But how was I going to teach account ownership? Particularly, who can withdraw and who owns account and who can withdraw from it. We don't want the tellers handing out money to the wrong person. So I used what I'd learned in Africa. I did the human figure, showing relationship, and I used story pictures. And people got it. They understood and remembered. And I was launched on a career in training. So I did many different kinds of training after that. This is, it works on legal concepts too. So this was a course in law taught in Phnom Penh. And this is the 4 elements of a contract. And you can see what the 4 elements are. It's written in Khmer, the language of Cambodia. But you can still see the essential parts of a contract. It includes something of value is offered for consideration in exchange for something else of value, that both parties are capable of understanding, and where no coercion is involved. That's it in a nutshell. The Cambodian government at what that time was reconstructing its constitution and its legal system after Pol Pot had killed almost everyone with an education in the country. So people, once he was deposed and people were coming back to Cambodia, the USF Law School was brought in to teach a law program to new legislators and new judges in Phnom Penh. So I was privileged to illustrate those courses and worked with a Cambodian calligrapher to get the language. Okay, now this, yes, sir.
Were you actually in Cambodia for a while?
No, I was not. I asked my contacts to have people on the ground in Cambodia collect any street publications that showed not ads, not fancy formal things, not temple drawings, but people in the street, like comic books. I asked them to look for comic books. And what they found was broadsides. Something very popular was cheap printed songs, popular songs, but with pictures of people in them. So they sent that back to me, and that let me know what hair looked like, what clothing looked like for people in the street at the time. Okay, now this unpacks income and expense. This shows the income streams for the Port of Oakland and how the city charter mandates that that money can be spent. So at the time, Jerry Brown was the mayor of Oakland, and he and the board of supervisors saw that there was a lot of money moving into the port, and they wanted to take a lot of that money to fund social programs in Oakland. So the director of the Port of Oakland used this to explain to them where the money came from. It didn't come from city funds or taxes, and how their own city charter mandated it could be released until once all of these 8 requirements were satisfied, the money could be drawn off and used for social and other programs. They got it. This was Visa USA was they ran yearly programs for bank clerks who had to code and enter chargebacks. And the way they did it was they'd have somebody in the front of an auditorium drone on for an hour or 2 with texts, projecting texts showing the codes and their definitions, and the clerks had to take notes. So they had me do some illustrations, and I showed the story behind what might be the story behind some of those chargebacks, and this helped the clerks to understand and remember some of those codes. Also kept from putting them into a coma while they were trying to take notes. This is one of my favorites. A man in India contacted me, I may not be, signaled me, somebody besides the man in the glasses and the white hair here, signal me if I can't be heard. this was a fellow in India who wanted to do an online course for Westerners in principles of spirituality according to Ayurvedic principles. And this was at the time, I mean, he had tried to get local people to illustrate for him, but he kept getting clip art that had nothing to do with what he was trying to get across. And this was at the time that the U.S. was first outsourcing customer service and tech support to India. So I was just delighted to be sitting in California doing helping India teach spiritual principles to there. Okay. So, and this is the last of these visuals. This is a flow chart, believe it or not. I was working with an accounting department, railroad accounting department, that was automating and changing from manual processes to computer-based processes, of which they had only a few. Now they were automating a lot. And so we had flow charts of boxes and diamonds showing how the workflow was going to go. And I said, these employees are going to pass out if we try to teach them how the workflow is going to work from those boxes and diamonds. So I drew what was actually happening in each of the boxes. So the departments and computer systems are down the left side, and then that shows what people are actually doing in each of those boxes. One of the amusing side notes for that was that the executives had looked at all the box and diamond flow charts and okayed, signed off on the new workflows. But when they saw this, they said, "Oh, is that what we're doing?" Okay, after a certain amount, after years of doing training and visual aids, I became a meeting facilitator. And I started using graphic recording graphic recording live during meetings. So a graphic recorder puts big paper, 4 feet high and anywhere from 8 to 10 or 12 feet long on the wall. And as the meeting proceeds, we record what people are saying and the decisions being made and the issues being raised in a combination of words, pictures, and symbols using felt pens. Then during pauses and breaks, we would use pastels, which you could quickly run on some color and then take a paper towel and rub it in and spread it around. And so, yeah.
Did you initiate this, or was this common practice?
This was common practice, or is becoming common practice. I learned it from another graphic recorder pretty early on. And I didn't know from pastels. That was my introduction to Pastel. A good business tool. Here is an actual graphic recording of a meeting. Actually, this was day one of an international staff was having a week of management development. And they started on the first day with storytelling, telling each other their stories. So the left side gives the reasons why for using storytelling and the process that they were going to use. And then the middle and the far right are the first 2 stories that were told. And many people told their stories that week, and I filled many sheets of paper.
Looks like back in Africa again, though.
Yeah, you know, it's people. This was this graphic recording I did at a conference, and a panel was unpacking the legacy of one of our gurus, one of our honored members, and they were doing it by telling professional war stories. So there actually is an order in this. So it goes down 4 columns like this. And anybody who was actually in the meeting can read it easily, and they can walk somebody else through it. Graphic recording is very effective, particularly during the meeting, because it helps the meeting stay on track. It helps the attendees stay focused. It helps people get clear on when they understood each other and when they didn't. It helps prevent repetition, and it helps people remember what was said and agreed to after the meeting. It's also good for, because latecomers can catch up without disrupting the meeting, because they can just see what's been said and what's decided by reading the wall. But you've got to work very fast when you're a graphic recorder. You get no points for skilled drawing or artistic touches. You only need to keep up with the group. Yes, sir.
Did you ever have to erase something?
Very.
Good question.
That's a good question. It doesn't have a real simple answer, but basically, I carried a lot of address labels with me, blank address labels, and then if somebody said, "No, I didn't mean that," I whip out the address labels, lay it over that, and then record over that.
It's like being a court artist for court reporting, like an artist.
Yeah, except a court artist actually has to be more accurate. You know what meetings are like, and everybody's talking or nobody's talking, and then somebody says this and somebody says that, and the whole time you're listening and you're trying to remember and you're coming up with images. It helps if you're somebody that just thinks in images anyway. And you're trying not to get left behind because the meeting doesn't wait while you catch up. So the end product is often a mess. However, people kept coming up to me during breaks or at the end of one of these sessions and saying, "Oh, you're an artist." And I would say, no, I'm not an artist. An artist paints what's inside of them. I'm trying to draw out what's inside of you. And other explanations they paid no attention to whatsoever.
Did they pay you well for doing this?
Yes,
That's good.
they did. So after years of that, I finally said, wait a minute. What if they're right? So I decided to give it a try. I found a local community college that had a good pastel art teacher, and I started learning how to use pastels. I picked pastels as my medium because they aren't wet, gooey, or smelly, and I was already familiar with them from graphic recording. And as my subject, I picked the landscape that Cress and I were always hiking, camping, and exploring in. And as I've gone this route, there's been many new conventions to learn, very different from what I was using back in Africa, such as atmospheric perspective. Now, whether atmospheric perspective is actually there in something I'm looking at or not, it's how people read the depth in a landscape, so I use it. We were in California at the time, and I'm originally from northern New Mexico. I grew up in Los Alamos. So I spent a long time in the San Francisco Bay Area, where we lived for 30 years, painting New Mexico. And when I retired from training and visual aids and graphic recording, I came home to my father's compound. So here I am, happily painting our landscape with pastels, and I found my community. It's you. So, I'm happy to answer any questions. Tried to handle it as we went, but you might have something lingering.
I was gonna say, you've been holding out on us for your minutes of our meetings.
You know,
Last time, it was like, wait.
okay, truth in advertising. I stopped graphic recording about 10 years ago. When I stopped being able to do deep knee bends repeatedly all the way across the wall, and when my short-term memory got shorter. So what somebody would say in a meeting would overwrite what I was retaining in memory. And so I could no longer do that. Now, I might consider illustrating the meetings afterward. That would still work.
And then everybody would want hard.
Then everybody want a copy and it wouldn't be wasting my time. Yeah.
So what happened to them after, did the company that hired you rolled them up and archived them?
Oh,
Or were they
good
thrown
question.
out, or what?
Good question. That's part of the graphic recorder's job. Is once you've got all your time during the meeting is creating the thing, and then just after the meeting, you're going in and adding color and embellishments and picking up things that you forgot. You found somebody who could come in and remind you, and then you have to post them on a hotel wall. You know how wonderful hotel lighting is, and photograph them. And then you take them home, take the photographs home, and you clean them up in Photoshop. And then assembled all of them into a PDF package and send them to the client, who then can send them out to the meeting participant as minutes. So I would occasionally go to a company like Tandem Computers, where I'd done a lot of, where I've illustrated for their Vision Week, which is when they do their strategic planning for the year and share it with all the managers. And I'd walk through the work areas after that, and I'd see pictures from that graphic recording tacked up in people's cubicles as they were working on stuff. So yeah, it was used.
Did you work for yourself, like
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you were hired by different?
I was an independent, and I was no good at marketing, so it was all word of mouth. So my work tapered off as my friends and colleagues and people who knew my work retired. Yeah. To answer Nicholas, your question about was there impact from some of those for the adult literacy? I did have one of the members of my adult literacy class got promoted to foreman of his agricultural station because he was able to read the packages and put together the mixtures. He was he came to our village during market day and said, "Ma, I come for tell you, they been promote me." That is in Creole, which is the lingua franca of Sierra Leone. And I exclaimed on this good fortune, and he said, and asked how it had happened. He said, "Well, I able for read the packet, and I can make the mixture. I able for read the schedule, and the boss, he no get for come out and tell we." He didn't need to come out and tell us. So the agricultural officer no longer needed to go out to Puabu Agricultural Station every week and pay everybody. And I'll have one more thing from the adult literacy class. The first thing, I asked the men what they wanted to learn, and they said, we want to learn to sign our names. We are tired of signing with a thumbprint and an X. So we didn't even tackle the alphabet. We just started right off with name signing. I got everybody's name, wrote it down. They practiced it on slates that we made. And by the time the agricultural officer came by our house on his way back from Puabu Station, he'd stop by for a cold beer. And he took a pull of his beer and then he said, it's the damnedest thing. He said, I've been paying off the lads in Puabu Station for every Saturday for the last 2 years. And they always sign with their thumbprint and an X. Today, every one of those buggers signed his own name.
Good job.
Did you inspire any of your drawings, any of the teens wanting to draw like you or try to?
I don't know. I wasn't then where we are now. And I don't think anybody was bold enough to ask me. And I wasn't imaginative enough to ask them. Most of those teens were boys who were attending the school, or they were young women, and young women were getting married around age 14 or 15 and starting to have children. So they had too much to do to. Okay, any other leftover thoughts and ideas? Yes, ma'am.
So in that country, there was no tradition of visual representation, no drawing.
Not, there were masks. There were masks and dance and drumming. And I'll tell you, a masked dancer is a visual experience. And they act out a visual experience as well. There were no materials that termites wouldn't eat. So there were carved masks, certainly, that were very elaborate and wonderful. But drawing on a piece of paper, when I did the adult literacy and gave all the men a piece of paper to practice writing their names, when I came back the next week with the next lesson and I asked if they had practiced, they said, yes, we have. And I said, may I see the papers? And they brought them out and there was nothing on them that hadn't been there already. And I asked, how did you practice? And they said, with a stick in the dirt. And I said, why didn't you use the paper? And they said, we didn't want to waste it. So resources are resources. We're very profligate here. Sir, you were going to say something? Yeah.
I'm just curious if you had to deal with any politics in Sierra Leone, with any of that coup d'etat or stuff like that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Chris, you want to say a few words about, he's asking, were there any coup d'etats or whatever? You were in the village when that happened.
Yes. Tear gas that was labeled for use in the United States and
Tear gas, you say.
tear gas, yes. There was politics, definitely. The SLPP, Sierra Leone People's Party, the APC, down country at the Capitol, the local rag of a newspaper apparently was claiming that we were all setting up guerrilla warfare camps in the jungle, and we were not isolated from all of that, even though we were in a remote village in eastern province. But, and eventually, of course, it all went to hell in a handbasket, and the Peace Corps got out of there because there was coups and a major war that went on for several years. And they finally sort of swept over from Liberia. And then when that got through, there were a few years where there was some recovery, and then Ebola came to Sierra Leone. So that went on for several years. Things are looking better now, but they've had a hell of a ride.
AIDS too, I would imagine.
Huh?
AIDS also, right?
AIDS? Oh, yeah. Though it's around, but it wasn't in the foreground. Not like in in South Africa particularly. Yeah, we didn't even hear of the existence of AIDS until it broke out in the U.S.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay, any more?
Thank you.
Thank you all.